Alright, well, hello everybody. This is Ricky Mike, and welcome to this. I guess I'm gonna call this a draft recap more than a draft analysis, to be honest with you, because I'm not planning to do any kind of analysis. Uh, but yeah, anyways, we're here to give you the draft recap of a new league that we joined. This league being the Soul Duo Association, or SDA for short. On their third season, we are on the Larios division, which is the upload required division, which is always fun. You get to see with your battles, from the opponent's side of you, which is, nice from time to time. Um, this is my first season joining them. Even though I've been a fan since the first season, I just never had the opportunity, or the timing wasn't great, or whatever. So yeah, very excited to be joining this season as one of the new coaches coming in. If you don't know already, uh, my team is the Virginia Victinis. That's always been the case. That is always going to be the case. Um, so yeah, this should be a short recap of what why I drafted it. But before I move into the first one, I guess the first thing I will say is that I was pick number 12 out of 16 coaches. So I knew I wasn't going to be getting any of the new toys, I suppose. But that's fine. That's fine. Um, there are definitely some things that I wanted to draft, or that I have, my mind made up on. And I think my draft was pretty good, all things considered. So anyway, let's move on to the first one, I guess. So my first one is gonna be Great Toss. Like I said before, um, being in the 12th position is a little bit tricky. Um, so I knew I wasn't gonna be getting any of the new toys, but I did have my mindset getting this monster in another league, and it actually got sniped before it got to me. So I'm glad that I was able to pick it up on this one. Um, Kratos is just, I like to call raw compression in one Pokemon. He's just great. Gives you a strong fighting type. He gives you, hazards as well as hazards control. You get a strong knockoff user. You get a ground type. So yeah, Kratos is just a monster. What else can I say? Um, like I said, given I was at the 12th position out of 16 coaches, I figured that grabbing Kratos will be um, a good month to build around. So yeah, there's not much else you can say about Kratos, right? He's just great. I will say that I've never been a Kratos denier. I just never used it on draft before. This is gonna be my first time. Um, but lately I've been playing a lot of OU, or a little bit more than OU than I usually do, I guess. Big since the Indigo this drop, and I gotta say, man, now I am a great toss believer, 100%. This Pokemon is just a monster. I can understand now why um, it is the number one use in overuse every month. This Pokemon is so good. I understand that it's probably better on ladder than it is on draft, but even on drafting, most teams that I see draft this team constantly make playoffs. It's just a great Pokemon. That's all I can say. So yeah, very happy to have drafted it, and hopefully it will put a lot of work for us during this SDA season. And this will be the great toss that we'll be using during the regular season. He is Doomsday Peckish, so he's hungry. So he's coming to eat all my opponents. And yeah, that's all I can say. So let's move on to number two, I guess. So Pokemon number two is gonna be Walking Wake, and you don't have to be a genius, I guess, to potentially see where this is going. Um, but yeah, we decided to grab Walking Wake because that is, in fact, another Pokemon that I had never gotten to use in draft, which is, a great opportunity. Like I said, you don't have to be a genius to see where my brain was going at this point on the draft. But yeah, no, I have faced Walking Way a couple of times now in draft, and I gotta say this Pokemon is actually pretty scary, man. A choice, his coverage is fantastic, you know, between water, fire, and dragon. Nothing resisted. The spec set is absolutely terrifying. Um, yeah, a good speed tier in 106 means that you know, we're starting with a decent amount of speed tiers, which is good to try to get since the beginning. Um, the typing is fantastic. You know, it shares the typing with Kindra and well, Kindra and some Texuki, I guess, whatever. But it's only weak to uh, Fairy and Dragon, which you know we can cover for on the remaining on the roster. You got some pretty nice tools in knockoff and flip turn, and it even gets Skull, which is actually highly valuable because now not every single water type on the game gets it. So yeah, no, we are pretty happy that we got Walking Wake. So I expect to see it most of the weeks, and this will be the Walking Wake that we'll be using during the week. His name is Seth Rollins, and he is well trained. Um, but if you get why this thing is called Seth Rollins, feel free to comment on the comments, I guess. All right, moving on to number 3. Yeah, so I bet you expected to see a different particular Pokemon as my third pick, but no, I actually saw this thing was undrafted by the time it came back to me. I understand it is another Dragon type, and I just drafted Dragon type, but man, I'm not gonna give up the opportunity to grab this if my plan works out. So my third pick is Roaring Moon. I had a pretty bad season with Roaring Moon last season in LET, but it was a little bit of a different Roaring Moon. The main difference on this one, I guess, is that during that season I wasn't allowed to use knockoff, which was devastating. Um, but now we can, and this Pokemon, it might sound silly because it is, but access to that one move makes this Pokemon so much better. I mean, you know, it did get banned from overuse, uh, purely basically just because it got knockoff, which is crazy. Uh, so yeah, this Pokemon, uh, I understand. I'm stuck in weaknesses, but I don't care. I can account for them later on, or fix them with the rest of my team. I have a strategy in mind. And this Pokemon gives me, and again, more momentum, which I love. It also gives me, like I said, stack knockups, really strong stack knockup. It can set up on teams, which is great with the massive special defense that it has, as long as you're not trying to hit me with a Fairy type move. And the speed tier is fantastic. Base 119, it is super fast, and I like to have fast options on my teams. So yeah, Roaring Moon, he's feels pretty nice with my team, if I may say so. Uh, yeah, this is the Roaring Moon that we'll be using this season. Her name is Maleficent, and she is a great friend. If you've seen the movie, you probably understand what this means. Anyway, moving on to number 4. Okay, so this probably makes sense. Yeah, I do think that, I mean, it was obvious. The fact that I drafted 3 Paradox Mons on my first 3 picks is obvious that I'm drafting Sun. And yeah, I decided to pick a Torkoal this turn because, you know, I was playing a little, I think I was playing a little bit too close to the Sun, you know, no pun intended, by not picking up my Sunsetter. I mean, if somebody else sniped it, that would have been bad, but nobody else seems to be trying to build a Sun team, so I'm like, fine. I can probably wait one more turn. I thought that Roaring Moon would be more likely to get sniped than this thing. And if ultimately this thing gets sniped, then I can pivot to Ninetales. Ninetales is not great. It's definitely not better than Torkoal. Not as necessarily as a Pokemon, but as you know, a Sunsetter. But you know, nobody else did pick it up, and that's fantastic because now we get to draft it, and now I have my Sun team, which is great. I never drafted Sun on draft yet, so I'm very excited to be able to use this Pokemon in a singles draft. I had used it in doubles, but you know, it's not the same thing, right? So yeah, a Sun team, fun stuff. First time doing it on Gen 9, which is great. Um, you know, Torkoal, like, what else can I say? It gives me rocks, it gives me spin if I need it. It's a bulky defensive wall. Um, you know, but the main priority is that, and the main reason why it was drafted on this team is because it's just, you know, it gives me some for my other three scary Paradox Mons under Sun. All the other three Pokemon that are drafted are good on their own, but having Song available makes them much better. And that's why we decided to go with Turbo, the Torkoal, which is the mon that we'll be using during this season. He doesn't have a ribbon currently or a mark. I'll have to give him one so he doesn't feel left out. But for the time being, you know, he's like that. All right, moving on to number 5. Okay, so now that I have a good offense and somewhat of a little bit of bulk in Torkoal, I think that it will be nice to start grabbing some of the other necessities that most teams get, and maybe some defense potentially. So we decided to grab Diancie, sure. I had drafted this one before on FBL, and unfortunately, even though we did win the championship, unfortunately this Pokemon only came to one game. It did great on that one game, fills its role perfectly, but you know, it only came to one game, so it is what it is. So this Pokemon, I'm hoping to give this Pokemon another chance, because I think it has a lot of potential, but you know, we will see. I originally didn't intend to draft this Pokemon. I originally intended to draft Florges. But so shout out to the guy that sniped it before me, like literally a couple of turns before he could get to me. Thank you for that. But you know, the answer is super solid. Most people tell me that was great. That's a great pickup. So I'm happy with it. You know, it is another rocker, which is great. It gives me access to spikes. It gives me access to, you know, it can set up if not properly checked. It shares a weakness, I guess, to ground with what's his name? What's his name? Torkoal, but that is fine. I mean, I am on a Sun team, so water type moves are not the most scary things versus my team. Ground type moves are okay. We can work with that. You know, we'll figure it out. And it gives me access, and it's probably it's only my only Pokemon with access to spikes. So yeah, but it's very good at stacking spikes, so that's great. But yeah, I don't have much to say about this Pokemon. It's just a solid Pokemon. It's a good fairy type, not the fastest. Oh, it gives me, I guess, the option of Trick Room. I'm not a big fan of Trick Room, but it gives me the option, so that's fantastic. Plus, I get to show off my shiny Yancy, which is always great. So this is the shiny Yancy we'll be using during the season. Her name is Peach, and she is Gorgeous Royale. So, yeah, that's all I had to say about this. Moving on. Pokemon number 7. Okay, so the next Pokemon we drafted is Bronzong. It is a Pokemon that I had drafted before. We won the championship. We won the PML championship with it, so I know it's a very solid Pokemon. The main reason why I drafted it is because I wanted a Steel type that wasn't weak to fire. And you know, Bronzong has the ability Heat Proof available to it, as well as Levitate. So either loses it either loses its weakness to fire or ground, depending on what I tailor for that week, which is great. More access to rocks, which is fantastic because hazards are great for a super offensive team, which will be my Sun mode. And yeah, you know, just a solid Steel type to try to check those Dragon types that are gonna try to come my way now that they see that I have 2 Dragon types. And it also helps with Fairies. It also helps, I guess, with Trick Room because it also gets access to Trick Room, and it's check Trick Room. It's a solid Pokemon. Like I said, it's the best Steel type that will fit my team, in my opinion. So I'm glad we were able to pick it up. Other than maybe Hit Run, but Hit Run is super expensive, and I don't have the points for that. So yeah, Bronson is familiar. I like it, and yeah, it should do great. This is the Bronson that we'll be using during the season. His name is Daft Punk, and he doesn't have a ribbon. How about that? I should give him the Paldean champion ribbon. I'll get to that. But moving on to the next pick. Okay, so for our next pick, we decide to grab a Pokemon that I've been trying to draft for the longest time, Ceruledge. I think this Pokemon is great, number one. Number two, I think this Pokemon on Sun is gonna be even more scary than it usually is, because Beer Blade is just a heck of a move. You know, with Kirikami coming up, it did get some nice upgrades in namely Poltergeist. That is a super scary, strong Ghost type move. As long as your opponent is holding an item, which you know in draft most Pokemon are. It gives me a Ghost type to get rid of to spin block if I need it. It's deceptively bulky and it can set up on a lot of teams. And it helps with fairy types, which again could be a problem given that I have three of my Pokemon are weak to fairy. So yeah, I'm excited to have drafted this because, like I said, I've been wanting to draft this for the longest time, and I never got a chance. Uh, so yeah, I don't know what else to say about Ceruledge. This league doesn't have item clause, thank goodness, which means I can run heavy duty boots on more than one Pokemon, so my hazard game is not as scary. That's usually what has prevented me from drafting Ceruledge in the past when I have the opportunity to do. But like I said, this league doesn't have item clause, which is great. Which means that if Ceruledge and Torkoal need to wear heavy duty boots 1 week, then that's completely fine, right? So yeah. Not much else I can say. Oh yeah, I guess a strong priority in the Staff Shadow Sneak, I guess. But also I like the speed tier. 85 speed tier help fits my speed tiers because I have really fast Pokemon now in the Roaring Moons, the Walking Wakes. We also have slow Pokemon for Trick Room. This Pokemon fits nicely in the middle, which means that opponents had to prepare for many different speed tiers now. So yeah, this is the Ceruledge we'll be using during the season. His name is Jack the Ripper. Don't blame me, that's the best way I could make that work. And he is the Gourmet, so he's gonna be cooking with them blades. Anyway, next Pokemon. Okay, so at this point I noticed that I was starting to develop a little bit of a weakness to ghosts, or not necessarily a weakness, I guess, but not the best resistances for it. Ghost type is probably the best offensive type in the game right now. So yeah, I've been guilty in the past of not drafting good normal types or good normal resists or immunities, and that has cost me, if not gains, at least a good amount of headaches. So this time I decided, you know what, I want a good normal type. And one of my favorite normal types came back during the Indigo Disc, that being Porygon 2. I saw that was still available at this point on the draft, and it was an no-brainer for me to pick it up. I think this is one of the best pivots in the game, even though it lost access to teleport. You just switch out. I mean, what's the big deal? So yeah, like I said, this gives me an immunity to ghosts now, which is great. Its abilities in download, analytic, and trace, they're all great, and they can do many different things. They can be customizable, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. What else? What else? Yeah, there's so much I can say. Like I said, I have a strong attackers. I just need. I think at this point I just need pivots, and that's what I decided to try to fill in a good balance between my attackers and my pivots. More access to Trick Room, I guess. Oh, that's hilarious. More access to Trick Room, which is always nice as an option. And yeah, this thing stops, either physical attackers or special attackers, depending on how you tailor it, because it has good natural bulk as it is. And when you add in, or when you factor in you know, the Eviolite listing just because a monster wall. Um, I had, like I said, I have played with it in the past. It has been great. Like I said, it has lost some tools like Toxic and Teleport, but that doesn't make it any worse. Uh, Actually, that makes it even better because that just means leagues keep putting me lower on the on points. So that's good for me because you know if people keep letting me draft it, I will keep drafting. So anyway, this is Dreambot, uh, the Porygon 2 that we'll be using during the season, and he is a very sleepy boy. So let's move on to the next Pokemon. Yes, yes, I know this is another psychic type. I get it, but hear me out here, because you know I was just talking about the ghost weaknesses, but hear me out. This is Yuxi. This is like so bulky. Um, I need to point this out because I haven't talked about it just yet. But the SDA has decided to implement a low-tier Terra format this season, meaning that Pokemon from 10 points, only Pokemon that are worth 10 points and under were allowed to Terra, with the exception of Regieleki, Regidrago, and the Dunsparce. So, at this point, if most of the Pokemon that I had drafted were not 10 points or less. The Ansi was, and that's a good option for Terra, I guess. Bronzong was, and Porygon was. Um, but I didn't. I also forgot to mention that I guess the way that the Terra budget works is you get 18 points to use in 2 to 3 Terra Captains. Uh, I have a Terra Captain in mind since the beginning of the draft, and that Terra Captain was worth 10 points. So I only have 8 points available to Terra my second captain. The Diancie, which will be 100% my choice if I have more points, will be my second Terra Captain, but that thing is worth 9 points, which makes it an impossibility. Which brings us back to Yuxi. I understand it's another ghost weakness, but like I said, I have an immunity or resistance, and I think I'm fairly covered with it. I'm piloting a Sun team for the most part, so this gives me another ground immunity on Levitate, which is great. And this Pokemon is just a great pivot, to be honest with you. Give it access to Terra as my secondary Terra Captain, and I think this Pokemon has a lot of potential actually. Um, it is like a worse Cresselia, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, you know, it gives me access to more rocks. It gives me access to uh, what's it called, more knockoff. It gives me access to what you call it, more momentum in either U-turn or uh, Memento. It gets Sunny Day, so you know if I need that for some reason, you know it gets it. Um, and yeah, I just think it's a very underrated Pokemon as a Terra Captain. I know people don't underestimate Yuxi. People hate Yuxi because it's so bulky. But as a Terra Captain, I don't think people think it's very good. I had to argue with myself to convince myself to get it from it. So, but I think it'll do great, and you know I'm happy I got it. Um, the Terra types that I declared for it, I guess, were Psychic, Poison, and Fairy, which I think they're great Terra types for it. Particularly Poison, meaning that cannot get poison. Um, I thought the rules meant that said that one of the Terra types needed to be an stab, and that's why I picked Psychic. He didn't. Turns out that's not the rule, but I guess I missed that. Otherwise, I would have made it electric instead. But you know, it is what it is. Anyway, this is Nairu. She is going to be the Yuxi that we're going to be using during the season, and she is a historic genius because, you know, Yuxi, Pokemon knowledge. Yeah. Anyway, let's go into our last pick. So this is our last pick. And like I mentioned before, this was in my mind since the very beginning when I decided I was going to go the Sun Team route. Uh, this Pokemon is worth 10 points and is the best Chlorophyll sweeper in the game. If you ever play with Venusaur, you know that. This Pokemon is incredibly scary. It's actually been giving me a lot of troubles in OU, mind you, on some teams because it's just so hard switching into this team. The fact that it was allowed to Terra, um, even though it was 10 points, is great for me. Other leagues that are doing low level tiers particularly ban this Pokemon from terrain, so hooray me. Uh, and yeah, this is the reason why I had to, I couldn't Terrastalize anything but Yuxi on my team. That being said, I think this is a fantastic Terra Pokemon because, like I said, it's the best chlorophyll in the game. Uh, it can set up, and with Terra, actually, it may have access to set up in a few teams because the three Terra types that I decided to bring were Grass for this tab, I guess, and because I have a Sun team, so, Earthquake. Fire, because they basically are opposite each other. But the last time that I decided to go was Dragon, because Dragon has a very good defensive typing, in my opinion. Only few teams being scared of it. You know, like Fairies, for example. But what Fairy is gonna want to come in front of a potential sludge bomb from this thing? So yeah, that's the main reason we decided to grab Venusaur. I think that it was one of the best allowable Terra Pokemon, but I didn't think anybody else was gonna draft it because I was the only person drafting, I guess, Sun. So it makes sense for me to leave it up to the last pick. I mean, you could draft this Pokemon, but and it's going to be good. But if you're not drafting Sun, then it's not going to be the best Pokemon for your team. You had to be drafting Sun Forest, so that's why I took a risk and left it for the very last pick, and it ended up paying off. So yeah, very happy I picked it up. Um, this is Mandy Rose. She will be the Venusaur we'll be using during the season, and she is the Tree Master because I guess we beat the Battle Tree with it. Um, so yeah. So yeah, with all that out of the way, this is the Virginia Victinis roster for the SDA Season 3 Latios Division. A Sun team with a bunch of pivots and some setup sweepers. Like I said, never drafted Sun on Gen 9 before, so I'm excited to be playing with it. I don't know how well I will be doing with it, but we're just here to have fun and use some stuff that we haven't used before. So yeah, that's all I gotta say. Nothing else, nothing less. Thank you for watching if you make it this far. And yeah, if you want to see some exciting battles, come back next week when we'll have our first week battle versus the commissioner of the league, upper tier, and a good friend of ours. With that said, thank you for watching, and see ya.